Welcome to the Pat White Show.
In recent weeks, I've done a lot of talking about a potential casino coming to New Haven, Indiana. And I've had people come up to me and say, well, the only reason you want a casino is because you're a gambler. Well, let me set the record straight 100% right now. I do not gamble. No, I don't. But do you gamble? Do you play the Hoosier Lottery? Do you get scratch-off tickets? Do you get into the NCAA Final Four pool? Do you get into the basketball pool? Do you take chances on about everything? Well, apparently a lot of people in this state do. Gambling in this state exists, whether anyone likes it or not. Yes, Indiana introduced gambling into the state in the 1990s. Now we have the Hoosier Lottery, this mega lottery. Oh, and here's something else that you might like. You want to gamble? Get an app on your phone. That's right, there's apps you can get on your phone. You can gamble sitting on your couch. People gamble. I don't. Now, still, well, you go to casinos. Well, I'll tell you what casinos I go to. I go to places like Four Winds up in central Michigan because they have great concerts there. People I want to see in concert, I'm not going to see down here in Fort Wayne. So, yes, I go to places where they have concert halls. Gives me a chance to see some great shows, have a great meal, enjoy myself, but I don't gamble. Now, the new facility, Rising Sun in New Haven, well, they're going to have a concert hall in there. Good, I get to see some concerts. But here's the deal. Why am I interested in seeing this happen in New Haven? All right, let me take you back in history. Back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, Fort Wayne was a destination town. How do I know? Well, you see, back in those days, we had something that everybody wanted to come and see. It was called Glenbrook Mall. It was the largest mall in the state. Everybody wanted to come and see it. Now, how do I know that? Because back in those days, folks, your license were issued by your county. And every county's plate, wherever you lived in, had a number on it. Starting number. I think in Indiana, they went from 1 to 92. I believe Allen County was 92. So you could go down the lanes of the cars in Glenbrook, check out the license plates, and see every county that car came from. Turns out they figured out most of the cars were from outside of Allen County. We became a destination location. So this is all about being a destination location. Now, down there at the Rising Sun in Ohio County, they opened up back in 1996. They were the only place down there, poor people area, around Cincinnati that people could go and gamble. Well, Ohio got tired of that, and a little over a year later, they opened up the Horseshoe $400 million casino in Cincinnati and destroyed the Rising Sun Casino. Plus, they put in 2 horse tracks with racing or with casinos in them. Ohio said, hey, we're going to fight back. They killed the revenue going down into the southern Indiana places because why go to Indiana when you go right there in Cincinnati to a fabulous $400 million casino? That's what happened, folks. So what are they doing? Well, state of Indiana, you realize we got a $30 billion annual budget, and a big chunk of that comes from gambling. Whether it's the lottery, whether it's the fees the casinos pay, all of that money comes in. It's close to, $600 million a year? Now, if we start losing that money because Illinois is doing gambling in their businesses, they've got machines, Kentucky's got machines, Ohio's got machines, everybody's getting a piece of the action. And the Indiana places are starting to die. If they lose that money from casinos, folks, you know what's going to happen? They're either going to have to cut services in the state of Indiana or raise your taxes and raise the sales taxes. Simple as that. Got to make the money somewhere. It's going to come out of your pocket. Now, gambling, we have people in this town who jump on buses and they go to casinos. A long time ago, they thought about putting a casino here in Fort Wayne. And, well, obviously, we know what happened to that. It didn't go anywhere. People didn't want it. Well, okay, so what happened to that casino? The Potawatomi Indians went up to South Bend, got the ground, and built a casino up there called the Hard Rock Casino. Yeah. And guess what that casino doesn't pay to the state of Indiana? 0 taxes. It's an Indian casino. They don't pay state taxes. Contributes nothing to the state. Well, what the casino down there in Rising Sun is, it's controlled by the state. If the people who own it want to bring it up to Fort Wayne, they want to turn New Haven into a destination town. Tell me something. What do you want to go to New Haven for right now? No offense to New Haven, but is it a destination town? The answer is no, it's not. But a destination town, you put a casino in there and they say you're going to bring in 1.1 million people every year. And they are going to be spending a boatload of money at the casinos because we have approximately 4 times the population of the area down there in Ohio County and southern Indiana. But it's not just Fort Wayne, it's all the counties surrounding Fort Wayne and the counties in next door in Ohio. 1.1 million people are coming in. So that congressman or that state senator from Wabash and Marion County, or Wabash and Huntington County, he knows a lot of his residents are going to come to the New Haven for their gambling. Not everybody gambles, but the people that do, they want a place to go, and they're going to go, whether you like it or not. So, is it a good addition? Well, that's going to be up to the legislature to decide. But this is a money issue, folks. This is a destination issue. And all the various sections of the government, and I want you to take a very close look at this. Look at the money these various entities are going to get. City money, state money, New Haven money, school district money, various organizations. Everybody's got their freaking hand out, and they're all going to get money. That's what they want. A casino could do that. Now you can say, well, we don't want that. Okay, fine. I'll guarantee you that casino closed down. Some other community is going to get it. Now, you want to get something in New Haven to make it a destination city, because that's what we're talking about. Well, then finally you're going to say to me, oh, well, the politicians didn't want it. Politicians don't want it because they're afraid it's going to cost them being reelected. This is the hard truth. I ain't going to tell you that unless you talk to them in person. But if you know what's going on and they know what's going on, they don't want to get involved because if something happens, they are afraid it will be used against them in the next election. They are scared, plain and simple. So, what do we got now? We have a decision. The state legislature has to decide. But this is a money deal, folks. Indiana is losing money out of their budget. And if they lose too much money, they're going to come after you for more income tax and more sales tax. Money's got to come from somewhere. Might as well let people who want to put their money into the casino, put their money into the casino. You're not getting my money out of it because I do not gamble. Clarify that again. I go to the places because they have nice concert venues. I'll go to see the concerts. That's me. And oh yeah, when I got married, I spent my honeymoon in Las Vegas. Why? I don't gamble, but my wife wanted to see Sammy Davis Jr. in concert, and she did. Just telling you, I don't have to gamble, but I can have a good time. So in New Haven, the state will decide, and if the state decides to bring it in, 1.1 million, turning New Haven into a destination city. Is that what you want? If you don't, keep bitching, because New Haven will end up being just a speck of dirt on the road. This could change things because the rules are changing and the states are trying to kill the revenue in Indiana. Just ask yourself, Ohio, what are you doing? Kentucky, what are you doing? Illinois, what are you doing? They're all trying to get Indiana's money. Let's try to get some of it back for ourselves. That's my take on it, and that's the way I stand on it. So now you know how I feel and what's going to happen. I don't know. It's up to the government to decide. But now you understand why I think it's a good deal, turning New Haven and the Fort Wayne area into a destination city once again. Just like it used to be for Glenbrook back in the old days. Just saying. That's my piece, and I'm sticking to it. Well, if you're a TikTok fan, you might be sitting on the edge of your seat because you're concerned you could be losing your TikTok. Well, here's the deal. United States Supreme Court on Friday morning, the 17th, said, you know what, TikTok, you got to sell to an American company because you're affecting American security because you're owned by the Chinese Communist Party. Now, I know they're saying it's over in Singapore, wherever it is. Nah, it's owned by the Chinese Communist Party. They have information on you. And all that data that you put into TikTok, they got. And they can see what's going on. And that algorithm they wrote that makes the system work is designed to get more from you. So, that's where you stand, folks. So right now, on January the 19th, unless somebody comes in and buys TikTok. TikTok in the United States is going to go dark. Now, has it happened before? Yes. India said, hey, we ain't doing that with TikTok, and TikTok was shut down in India. But let me ask you a question. Can the Chinese people get TikTok in their country? Can they get Google in their country? Can they get WhatsApp in their country? Can they get Facebook in their country? Nope, they can't. Now you're asking yourself, really? They can't get those things that we get? Well, they can't. That'll let you know exactly how the game is being played in China. So, the folks who own ByteDance, I believe it's called, as a name, they've got to decide if they're going to sell to an American people. And there's some people bidding on it. I happen to know that Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary's got a bid on the table, and they say it's going to take probably $10 billion, yes, with a B, $10 billion to buy TikTok. Now, why would billionaires want to buy it? Well, because it's used. You know, many, many years ago, there used to be a thing called MySpace. And I remember my kids going into college, that's what they were getting down at IU. And I had MySpace. But then when the adults started figuring out we can go on MySpace to see what their kids were doing, the kids migrated and went to another place. Well, today, most adults, or the majority of adults, are on things like Facebook, TikTok, Truth Social. But the kids are on things like WhatsApp, and they use TikTok too, by the way. WhatsApp, Instagram, because they don't want to be where their parents are. But right now, TikTok is one of the biggies. It's got millions and hundreds of millions of subscribers. And they're going to have to shut down on January the 19th unless they sell to somebody. Will they sell? I do not know. Would they shut down in America on the 19th if they have to? Well, that'd be a bad plan because America's a big moneymaker for them. Businesses like to be on TikTok. And companies and people who provide stuff, providers, if you will, maybe even influencers, they like being on TikTok. So, will TikTok sell? Now the United States Supreme Court says, sorry, dudes, can't operate in the United States. You're a security risk. I heard the Supreme Court pleadings when they had the case in front of the Supreme Court. People from TikTok, their lawyers, did not convince the court. Trust me, they didn't convince them in any way, shape, or form. And the Supreme Court said, sorry, you got to sell. So that's where it stands, folks. Now you know what's going on. So let's see what happens on January the 19th. Will TikTok sell or will they go dark? It's their call, and it should be interesting to see how the whole thing plays out. Well, if you've been following the news today, you probably heard of a story about what Joe Biden did in the last minute. He literally issued a pardon for, well, some very high-placed people. Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, Liz Cheney, the entire staff and members of the staff of the January 6th event. All those people give him a pardon, but here's the one that was even more suspicious and bothered me a whole lot more. He pardoned everyone in his family, his siblings. Pardoned all these people on the last minute, I mean, minutes before he left the office, did this pardon. Now, when you pardon somebody, isn't it saying that they did something bad and you're forgiving them for it? Well, none of these people necessarily have been accused of anything. Well, except for Biden's brother, that even the member of Congress, Congressional Committee recommended that he be charged for perjury. But he pardoned everybody. What is going on that we in America don't know? What happened? You know, there's been rumors and everybody said, oh, that's conspiracy theory, that's totally wrong, you're making the whole thing up. And yet at the last minute, he pardons everybody involved. Pardoning Liz Cheney? Really? Pardoning the entire January 6th committee, the staff and everyone? So no one has to worry about being called in and ratting on somebody else? Folks, that doesn't look good. That doesn't look good for a lot of reasons. Pardoning General Milley, you know, a former military like me, what he did was he committed treason to his country, what he was doing. And pardoning Dr. Fauci, Anthony Fauci. Remember, he was the guy that told us all to wear masks. Turns out none of that actually works. Told us all to stay 6 feet apart from everybody. None of that works. He closed down schools, he closed down churches, he closed down businesses. None of that really meant anything. And he kept saying the entire time this thing was created from an accident in a marketplace. And now all the information's coming out that it was in a Wuhan lab. Somehow it got out. A poison that, an illness, if you will, that, well, we were paying for. All of those things, folks, are very, very disturbing. I've never, in all my years of watching presidents, seen one president excuse so many people. And who probably were doing something. We just don't know what it was. And we'll never learn because now they're free to go. When you start doing that, when you start making those kind of moves and pardon people willy-nilly, maybe something bad was going on. We just didn't know it and probably will never know what it was. But it's disturbing, folks. And if it doesn't disturb you, you're not paying attention. This is not the way government's supposed to work. This, unfortunately, is the way corruption works. And corruption has been excused. And that's not the American way that I remember. And maybe you don't remember it either. Something's not right, America. And this was wrong on more than one way. But I don't know what you can do to repair it. Just my thoughts. Ever since the election was completed and Donald Trump won in, well, a landslide, a lot of things have been happening in Washington, D.C., and some of which may surprise you. Well, maybe they won't. If you remember during the first term of Donald Trump in the press, the CNN representative was a guy named Jim Acosta. And Mr. Acosta, you see here, he was about as surly as it gets in the press room. And, you know, it almost came to blows on a couple of times. He was just about as arrogant and insurgent as anybody you could want. Well, after Trump lost the 2020 election, Costa went back to CNN. And he's been back on CNN. He's had a program on there called the CNN Newsroom. And normally I don't watch it, but apparently it's at 10 a.m. every morning. Now that means it's 10 a.m. on the East Coast and 7 a.m. and for the people on the West Coast. So you got to cover the left coast and the right coast, because those are the only people that voted for the Democrats. Well, anyway, and then you have another guy on CNN, Wolf Blitzer. And who can forget Wolf? I mean, you know, the whole beard and the thing going on. Well, Wolf Blitzer, remember, had the thing called the Situation Room. And that aired at 6 p.m. Now it's 6 p.m. on the East Coast. It was 3 p.m. on the West Coast. Well, guess what? Those two gentlemen have had their programs adjusted. Can I say altered? Or I don't say altered. Seems that Jim Acosta, his program has been moved from 10 a.m. in the morning to midnight. Yes, midnight. I don't know about you, but I'm in bed. But so they, East Coast could see it at midnight and the West Coast could see it at 9 p.m. And they say, oh, they're going to love you out on the West Coast, Jim. Going to love you out there at 9 p.m. Okay? And Wolf Blitzer, guess where he's moving? Now that Situation Room that he had, well, that was running at 6 p.m. at night. Big time, man. 6 p.m. the East Coast, 3 p.m. on the West Coast. He's moving to 6 a.m. in the morning. That's right, he's going to be your good morning guy. Going against CBS and NBC and Today's Show and Good Morning America and everything else. And so both of these gentlemen are going to, well, the swamp. Well, more like quicksand. They are being buried, and they will no longer be seen. Well, very rarely seen. If they want to keep their job, they better take the deal, or else, well, they're going to be unemployed. But let me tell you one more thing going on. Well, as you know, Elon Musk is doing the Doge thing, getting rid of waste and abuse. And now what he wants done is he wants the WFH solved, work from home. He's telling all the federal employees, get your butts back into work. That's where you belong. And he means it. He said, if you don't want to come back to work, you're fired. Well, guess what the workers are saying in Washington, D.C.? We'll come back. You ready? We'll come back, but we want a 32-hour work week for the same pay we were getting. Excuse me? 32-hour work week for the same pay? They said, well, yes, we'll be more productive. More productive mind left tushy. Ain't gonna happen. That's what's going on in Washington, D.C., folks. Just a little something to add to your day so you know exactly what's going on CNN. And the work from home folks in Washington, D.C., been told to get their butts back or else they're fired. Now they want to work 32 hours for the same amount of money. Go figure, folks. Washington, D.C. And now you know. Well, one of the latest exercises by your House and Senate down in Indianapolis was to introduce legislation, working on a bill, if you will, that went through both the Democrats and the Republicans that would ban social media from anyone, Hoosiers, who are under the age of 16 whose parents have not given them permission. You heard me right. The state of Indiana is looking at a bill. It's Senate Bill number 11, Senate Bill number 11, that would require social media operators like Facebook or TikTok or whomever to restrict the media from accessing the site if they don't have the permission from their parents if they're under the age of 16. Now that sounds all really interesting and cool, and only one person actually voted against it. The Chesterton representative said no, he can't go for it. But here's the problem. How are you going to police that? How are you going to convince the national companies like Facebook and TikTok and WhatsApp and all those other applications that exist out there to say, no, you've got to have a parent's permission if my kid is under the age of 16? I really don't know how you're going to do that. And secondarily, can that be done legally? Now think about that. You don't think these big national companies are going to say, take this to court? Because I believe they will. But anyway, despite reservations, and there were reservations in this committee, both Republicans and Democrats have agreed to banning social media from Hoosiers who haven't yet exceeded the age of 16. And how you're going to do parental permission on that, you're going to write Facebook, you're going to write TikTok, say you have my permission for my kid to go on? I don't know how they're going to handle that. So right now, folks, there's something brand new down in Indianapolis. Your state, your representatives in the U.S. and the state Senate want to ban your kid from TikTok, Facebook, and all those other social media sites if they're under the age of 16. Will this work? Can it be done? Will it face legal issues? All those things are still up in the air, folks. I have no answer for you on anything. But now you know what your elected officials are doing down in Indianapolis. Banning your children from being on Facebook, TikTok, whatever, under the age of 16 unless you provide parental permission to these major companies. How that's going to work, folks, is beyond me. But I guess you can't blame them for trying. Well, what do you say we take a few minutes to talk about the concept of tipping? That's right, giving money to someone for services rendered. That's essentially what a tip is. But America, well, what's America feel about tipping and how are they responding to that? Well, a new study has just been released. Now, keep in mind that workers who work with tips usually expect a minimum of 15%. It's been that way as far back as I can remember. But average in restaurants now, and this is taking all restaurants into consideration, the tip level is now at 18.8%, which is a little bit more than 15%, obviously. But believe it or not, it's down from 19.2% back in 2021. So it's dropping a little bit. But you say, well, why is that? Well, you remember back in 2020 and 21, we were dealing with a COVID issue. Hey, if you got out to eat and you were able to go out to some place and had food, you pay the waiter. Hey, there you go. At least we're outside. But that's for the average restaurant, and that's across the board. Now, if you go to a full-service restaurant, and we have plenty of full-service, what I call steakhouse restaurants, high-end restaurants, the average tip there is now 19.3%. Well, back in 2023, it was 19.8%. So it's actually dropped down a little bit at the full service restaurants. Quick serve restaurants. Now, that to me would be like, I don't know, an Applebee's, I guess, O'Charlie's, those kind of places. Their tip is average about 15.9%. And it used to be 16.5% back in 2021. So, America, we are suffering from tip fatigue. Because everywhere you go, I don't care what the place is, they got a tip jar sitting there. Here, tip me for this, tip me for that. One of the things that I see is when I go to a Subway place, to be honest with you, a Subway. And they have a thing there on the machine. How much do you want to tip us? It's in the thing when you plug in your card, the electronic machine. And I hit the no tip. Because if I've got to stand there and wait for my food to be done, and I'm paying, $12 for a sandwich? Excuse me. I ain't tipping for that. Now, if somebody does something really extraordinary, and I don't know what it could be at a Subway shop, I might think about it. But right now, if I sit down at a restaurant, okay, I'm going to give somebody a tip. But here's something else you're seeing now lately that kind of galls me a little bit. They hand you this machine. It kind of looks like a big cell phone. And it's got the price of what price, and it says, okay, here's your tipping thing. And the lowest it starts at is like 18%. And it goes up to like 25%, or else it says no tip. And the entire time that surfer is looking over your shoulder to see what you're going to tip them. Sorry, but that irritates me. Don't know about you. I'm just trying to tell you what's going on with tipping in America, because now everything is turned into electronics. Hey, you okay, pick out which tip you're going to give me. They're telling me you're going to give us 18%. Well, unless you want to go through the machinations of saying, no, I'll put in my own tip, whatever I'm figuring out. Okay, fine. I'll bend over a little bit. But the whole concept of tipping is now tipping fatigue in America. Americans are kind of getting tired of this, but I will say those workers are, most of them are working pretty hard. I'm not going to fault them for anything. And fortunately, the president says he's going to have no tax on tips. That works for me. I'm okay with that. But America is growing tired of this tipping mentality, because not everybody deserves a tip, because sometimes the service absolutely sucks. Well, here's a new piece of legislation that's been introduced down in Indianapolis. The legislation has to do with the legalization of marijuana. It came to be in the legislative session going on right now, and the legislatures held a news conference on Wednesday talking about legalizing marijuana. House Bill number 1630 is to safely regulate cannabis, they said, to people 21 years of age or older. Now, many states, when they really get involved with marijuana, usually open up with legalizing it in medical cases. And I can understand that totally, because a lot of people out there utilize marijuana to relieve the problems they have undergoing cancer, especially undergoing chemotherapy. I understand that totally. But the state of Indiana is saying, no, we're going to bypass that totally. We're going to go right to straight recreational use. Why? Because everybody around us is doing it already. That's right, you got Ohio, Michigan, and I believe Illinois. They're all allowing the sale of recreational marijuana to anybody over the age of 21. And Indiana is saying, hey, we're losing money in this deal. We gotta start making this stuff available to people who want it. Well, all right, I understand that. Monkey see, monkey do. But my concern is, and I think it's a concern of a lot of folks in the law enforcement field as well, how do we know if someone's stoned driving? Something I got to ask. How do we know? Now, if you're out there drinking while driving, or they arrest you, and you blow into the breathalyzer, you got the whole breath test, they got the test they give you on the side of the road, and they look in your eyes and everything else, determine that you got a blood alcohol content over 0.08, or 0.8 rather. So there's the deal. They've got a breathalyzer that does this. Currently, there is not a way to test your blood to see how much tetrahydrocannabinol you have in it. And the only way to do that is with a blood test. Now, some people say, well, you can do it with a urinalysis test. Yeah, I could just see a police officer on the side of the road. Hey, while you're here, pee in the cup. Sorry. I don't think that's going to work. So right now I'm concerned, and I think a lot of other people should be concerned as well. Because I don't want people on the road who are stoned driving out there. It doesn't matter. We can do it to people who are drinking and driving. We better be able to do it with people who are smoking and driving. Once they get that test, and I understand the state of Colorado is working on creating such a test, then I might be a little more attuned to seeing about it being legalized. Right now, I'm one of those people that says, sorry, not right now because it can't be tested in the field. And with that, I don't want dangerous drivers on the road that could kill you or me. My thoughts on this depends on what you think, and if you're worried about it, talk to your legislators. I don't know if you've been following the story or not. I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. There is a trial, or was a trial, going on in Panama City, Florida. A Navy veteran by the name of Zachary Young was suing CNN for defamation. It had to do with the Afghan situation when the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan. And Mr. Young was accused by CNN of being a profiteer, a hustler, taking people out of Pakistan for exorbitant amount of money, and literally being nothing more than a pirate, if you will, and doing all of this. And CNN was pretty hard on Mr. Zachary Young. As a result, he suffered. He couldn't be in business anymore. He lost his job. His contract was canceled by a company he was working for. His security clearance was taken away. So he was pretty much defamed by the reporter from CNN. Now, this trial had lasted about a number of weeks, and the concern was, is CNN going to get off the hook, or was Zachary Young going to beat CNN? Well, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury finally came back. And when they came back, they called CNN guilty. And the jury awarded Mr. Young $4 million in lost earnings, and another $1 million in personal damages. But here's where it gets really interesting. You see, in a defamation case like this, the jury is allowed to set punitive damages, sort of like the slap on the wrist, if you will, or this time it's a kick in the butt, to CNN and the reporter, Mr. Marquardt. Now, the jury was going to sit and deliberate over it, and they could have awarded Mr. Marquardt, or Mr. Young rather, a serious amount of money exceeding $100 million in punitive damages. Because the judge said, as long as you don't break the company, do you want to determine how much damages is worth? Go right ahead, do what you got to do. Now, so after the trial ended, the CNN met with Mr. Young, and they worked out a deal on punitive damages. Now, it was signed with an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, so nobody knows exactly what the settlement was, but the jury then was dismissed because a damage amount had already been figured out. Now, what does all this mean? Well, CNN said, we don't care, we believe in our reporting, we did what we were supposed to do, but they are paying out a boatload of money, and they tried to get out of this by a fake apology they put on the air. But if you think your texts are gone, you think you could erase texts off your phone? Don't. Because the attorneys representing Mr. Young found out the texts CNN people had sent to one another, the colleagues, if you will, and in there they said, we're going to get this guy. So it wasn't newsy, it was about revenge, getting back at somebody who they didn't like. As a result, CNN is paying a hefty amount of money, at least about $5 million, just in punitive damage, or in compensatory damages. But that punitive damage could have been a massive amount of money. But whatever it was, CNN had to settle. Is CNN out of the woods now again? Probably not. Just telling you what's going on. So if you think you can hide your text messages and somebody drags you into court, don't think you can hide them. You can't. Things like that on the internet, they last forever. So whatever you do, keep that in mind as you go down the road. Something for you to think about. CNN loses, and loses big. In Panama City, Florida, the trial is now over. One of the small details that is yet to be announced, and frankly it has been announced, is who is going to be the person taking over the Secret Service. As you know, Donald Trump has appointed people for the Secretary of Defense and Homeland Security and State Department, virtually everybody. But the one more critical one is the head of the U.S. Secret Service, because that's the job of the Secret Service, is to protect the president. Now, they have undergone some serious criticism recently, especially dating back to that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, when Donald Trump was nearly killed by a young potential assassin. And that Secret Service mess was, in fact, a mess. However, as a result of that, hearings were held in Congress, and the current person who was the director of the Secret Service, her name was Kimberly Cheadle. Now, how did Kimberly get her job? Well, apparently she was the person responsible for protecting the First Lady, Jill Biden. And she ended up getting the job as the head of the Secret Service. Well, she appeared before Congress, and it wasn't her best showing, believe me. Ultimately, she resigned, stepped down, retired, call it what you will. Then her assistant, Ron Rowe, came in and took over, and he appeared before the Congress, and, well, that got even more heated. So ultimately, he's out. So, who is going to take over for and run the Secret Service now that Trump is the 47th president? Well, there was talk about Dan Bongino taking over the job because he was former New York police. He was a Secret Service agent for many years in the White House. But, tell you the truth, Dan's got a good gig doing radio. Lives down in Florida. He'd have to move to Washington, D.C., get involved with that morass, and nobody wants to go there. So he apparently said, no, I got a radio job, is make a good change here, so, nah. Well, what they ended up doing, Donald Trump appointed a gentleman by the name of Sean Curran. Now you're going, who's Sean Curran? Well, I want to show you some pictures of Sean Curran, and about every single place you could think of, Sean Curran's in the picture. I mean, he was the first agent to get to Trump when he was shot on the stage in Butler. Yes, he was there. He is at every event. You take a look around, the one person you're going to see is Sean Curran. He's as close to the president as anybody you could possibly think of. At the funeral for Jimmy Carter, there they are, president sitting in the row. Right behind him sits Sean Curran. I'm going, who is that guy? Sean Curran. Sean Curran is the head of the detail in protecting the president. He had 85 men under his command, and he's been in service for 25 years. There's no slouch in this. So he's going to be taking over as the head of the Secret Service, and let's hope that he can whip this thing back into shape the way it should be, the way the Secret Service is supposed to be. Now, remember, he was the guy trying to get more agents to help in the coverage of Trump, but Cheadle and she didn't believe he deserved any more coverage. So Sean Curran is now the new head of the Secret Service. Something you probably didn't know, and maybe don't need to know. But when you see the pictures, the one guy in there all the time, that's Sean Curran. And now you know who that gentleman is. If you're wondering, who's that guy always with the president everywhere he goes? Sean Curran. Now the new head of the U.S. Secret Service. Well, a lot of times I've been talking about things going on in the political world, but this time I'm going to talk about something that's happening in the entertainment, namely the radio and TV world. You probably haven't heard about this, but anybody in media, this is going to catch their attention because here's the deal. There is a broadcast chain, 20 stations, I believe, in this broadcast group, TV stations, about 20 of them, and they go everywhere from Hawaii to California to Wisconsin, Alabama, Arizona, Louisiana. It's called the Allen Media, and they've got about 100 stations in their chain. They have just laid off all of their meteorologists, all their weather departments. Now think about that. You know, in a regular media broadcast on TV, the thing most people want to watch is the weather to find out what the weather's going to be like for the next day. I mean, they know what the news is, they know what sports is going on, but the weather is something they want to see about every single day, and the numbers have proven people want to watch the weather and the newscasts. Well, This company just laid off all of their meteorologists. And what they have decided to do is to use a group called the Weather Channel out of Atlanta to custom do forecasts for all those TV stations from Hawaii to Louisiana and Wisconsin. Because of the internet, you can do it on satellite, you can do it via the internet now, create their own forecast for each market, and have no local meteorologists there to do it. Now, why would they do that? Well, some people would say money. Hey, you get rid of 100 people, you're going to save a lot of money. Is this a trend happening to other TV stations? You know, people in meteorology are actually pretty cool in this town. I'm going to use this town in the state of Indiana. Many years ago, a guy came out of Ball State University, started working for a TV station in Indy, ended up becoming a big star. His name was David Letterman. He used to do the weather on WTHR in Indy back in the 70s. I used to watch it. You watched it because he was funny. You never know what he was going to say or do. But here locally, let's talk about some of the best weather people and the weather people that have become famous in our town. Let's start off with Jay Walker over Channel 21. Jay was a socialite. That's about the only thing you can say. Jay did everything. Jay was also the only weather person who could say that he was also the morning guy on a 50,000 watt clear channel radio station. WOWO. Jay Walker actually did that too. Well, Jay did a lot of things in the weather. And here's somebody else to think about, Sandy Thompson. I don't know if you remember her, but she was on Channel 15. I think she was like the first woman that I knew about, the first woman I ever saw that was doing the weather. Now, she may not have been the first person, I don't know. It was the first time I've ever seen a woman doing the weather. Sandy Thompson did the weather, and she was very popular. She was one of the most popular people in the newsroom. And then who could forget, I'm not going to forget him because he's still around, Greg Shoup. Greg Shoup over at Wayne TV. He has spent his entire career, I can't tell you how many decades that is, but I've worked with Greg for a number of years in a number of things. And he's still doing the weather over at Wayne TV. And you know what? When he does his forecast, he means it. Because Greg doesn't like being wrong 50% of the time. And maybe other people, they don't care. They don't figure they're not going to lose their job. Greg's serious about what he does. I would hate to see that people like that get laid off simply because the station owner wants to save a few bucks, figures the weather can be done by some national organization sending their own weather report via the internet or the satellite to that particular station. Sorry. This is what's going on, folks. Bothers me a whole lot, because if they could get rid of the weather people, can they get rid of the sports people? Can they get rid of newscast? Do it totally from some remote place that covers everybody? Not a good start, folks. Not a good trend. This is a bad one. Just thought I'd tell you about it in case you didn't know. Thank God, we still have good weather reporters here in our city. Just my thought.